it very much depends on the corner what the optimal line is going to be. But to be honest, quite often it's like if you're driving a go-kart or something like that. So you want to go in fairly wide and then cut through the apex. And so a lot of people have a tendency to start wide, but then they just stay wide for the whole corner, and then you're not really gaining anything from starting wide. So if you are going wide, you've got to try and cut through the apex. The question about whether to check speed or how to do it depends a lot on the corner. So if it's a course that you know a lot, it could be good to practice the corners and try going in without checking the speed and seeing how you manage to get around the corner. Maybe you'll end up losing balance, or you might have to check your speed slightly later. Then it's a practice thing. And I think if you can get through a corner without checking the speed, it's going to be an advantage. And what I try and do is really focus on doing long pushes on the outside foot. A lot of people have a tendency to try and step too quickly and do too short steps. But if you really try and keep the pressure for longer on the outside foot, then you can get around the corner with fewer steps, and you maintain the speed better by doing that. So that's one of the things I would really practice at if I were you, is really trying to keep the pressure on the outside foot and long pushes. And so if there are any drills or anything to work on for that, then or to be honest, you could start with more less sharp corners and really just trying to do as few steps around as possible, just to really work on that outside push. I think that's a good way of practicing things, and then you can build up to higher speed corners that are slightly sharper. So yeah, that's my not particularly helpful, because it depends on each individual corner, but in general people can do corners faster than they think, checking the speed less.
So in a question for you, just from your experience, let's say in the must start. So in the must start event, in that situation, the fast corner, would you try to stay wide and kind of step and cut across, or would you try to slide as tight to the corner as possible to avoid anybody doing something, falling or whatever, just to be in front of the traffic?
That is a good question. So that also probably depends on the situation. If it's towards the start of a race and there's a ton of people, then like you say, it could be a good idea, instead of taking the optimal line, just trying to stay on the inside and slide round, just to keep your position, or to stop any crazy French people that we have in the World Cup coming on the inside and taking you out. And then that also applies at the end. If you're trying to keep position, maybe it's better to have to slide more and not being able to take the optimal line, but not letting anybody else come on your inside and being able to keep your position. So it's a little bit down to, you've got to kind of play it by ear, if you think you're going to get the best benefit from going the fastest line and maybe being able to pass someone in front of you, or if you've got to maintain your position. So it's a sort of balancing act there.
And you kind of related a little bit, that's another question I have for you, kind of a little bit related to it. So on the World Cup, you pretty much know who is who can handle downhills pretty well, who is not. So it's probably in situations in some smaller local races, people know who is a good on a downhill or not. So do you tactically choose, how to be maybe in front of those skiers that maybe not as great technical?
I'm one of the ones that's rubbish at downhill. But like at the end of a mass start race, often my tactic is like, you find one of the guys that is good at positioning themselves in the field, and is good at downhill sections, things like that, and then you try and stick on their back so you can follow their line and use them to help you navigate through the field. That's one thing that is really useful in mass starts, just having a couple of people you know are really good at it and trying to follow what they do.